So yeah, so then on starting around Monday night or Tuesday morning, I'm like forgetting the exact timeline right now, but you started to hear rumors that one Premier League club was thinking about pulling out, and that would have been huge. Like they needed to stick together. Had they stuck it out, had they wrote it out, they probably would have pulled it off. But one team, especially a British team, getting out would have caused the whole thing to collapse. And so like I can only imagine the phone calls, like the Zoom meetings that were going on, the fucking, are you fucking kidding me? You're getting out of this shit. Get this thing, grow some balls, you pussy. You gotta stay in this, like, and
it's gonna be a great book.
Oh my god! Like,
whatever
journalist kind of gets the inside, the sort of the too big to fail version of this one, I will be reading, 100%. But yeah, it was there was rumors that one English team was going to pull out, and it looked very clear that it was either going to be Chelsea or Manchester City, and it's unclear which of the two teams, like internally, decided like we're out before. But Manchester City was the first club to announce publicly that they were pulling out. And that's important because Manchester City is the richest club in the world right now because they're owned by Abu Dhabi and they spend more money on players.
Which is why it was so surprising when that happened. Not to cut you off, but I was like, when Man City was dropping, I was like, this is a club that is owned by like what you would imagine would be, a group of people who would be most interested in like the finance.
Well, no, it's the opposite. They don't need the money.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
So they don't need the money. They have Manchester City for soft power purposes. Like Manchester City is a rounding error for them.
Capitalism is good. Wealth is good. Wealth is
good, but they're soft. But the reason why they get into sports, the reason why the Gulf is getting into sports is not to make money. They make money from fucking oil.
Yeah.
They get into sports for soft power. That's why fucking Saudi Arabia is hosting WWE tournaments. Like they're not, the money is nice, but it's not like
exactly. It's not making or breaking them.
Exactly. So once they saw the fan backlash, they were like, no, the whole point of this whole thing is for soft power, popularity, reputation, not making a bottom line. Crucially, it's the American owners who are what are you talking about? Like, we need to maximize profit. Like, this is what it's about, bro. The oligarchs in a way don't give a shit. So that's why it was interesting to me that it was Chelsea owned by a Russian oligarch and Manchester City owned by Gulf oligarchs that were the first to pull out. Yeah. And once that happened, it was an absolute free for all. It was amazing. Like the drip of the news that was coming out, they put out this press release. I can't tell you guys, like this is like the European Super League, which would have been a multi-billion-dollar like venture. Some of the biggest brands, teams in the world put out a press release in like Times New Roman with spelling errors and like no header and like not justified. Like it was like, it looked like like someone was yelling on the phone, like, telling someone fucking type this up as quickly as possible and put it out there, saying that the Super League was still going on. The president of Manchester United resigned, Ed Woodward. There were rumors that the president of Juventus was going to be out, but those turned out to be false. I mean, it was just
they brought in Guaido.
Pandemonium. What?
So they brought in Guaido.
They brought in Guaido. They brought in Guaido to be the new rightly elected leader of the Super League. So yeah, but no, it was amazing, and that's when the whole thing started collapsing. Sort of like just 48 hours after its official announcement, it was pretty clear that it was over. It was done, toast. Yeah. Pretty remarkable. Like I gotta say, I just can't remember something like it in my life, something like that. Just something so, it was going to be such a seismic shift to the most powerful and most popular sport in the world. It was going to be like a totemic shift. It's as if someone said like, okay, Hollywood, we're moving it to Singapore, and that's where Hollywood's going to be now. Like it was like that. Like imagine if that happened in some way, and like all the studios, for example, were like, we're leaving in mass the United States and we're going to some other country and we're going to make movies there and we're going to make the profits there or whatever, because for whatever reason, that's like how seismic this would have been. So yeah, it was pretty awesome.
And it was really awesome, especially in our current timeline to see a bunch of rich assholes threaten something that's important to a lot of folks. To sort of have to eat crow. I want to ask, well, I want to ask in a second about the omissions, right? Because notably, the French teams weren't a part of it, but I think more importantly, for the way I'd like for us to talk about this, the German teams weren't. But before I get to that, I also just want to make sure that we mention that there has also been a reckoning within the clubs as well, from my understanding. Like, there have been people who are stepping down. There are going to be sales. People who were behind this, basically, not everybody, but there's looking like there's going to be a purge, especially in the UK.
I suspect that a lot of these American investors, when they bought into these big teams, assumed or put it in their business plan that the Super League was going to happen. You know, I can't imagine that AC Milan, which is a team that struggled big time in the last decade or so, I can't imagine that club is like a worthwhile financial venture without something like the Super League. And so there is a reckoning, and you're right that it was kind of crucial, and it was probably crippled the Super League from its inception, that the French and German teams weren't there. The French team that, you know, the one that would be there is Paris Saint-Germain. The reason why it was not there is because Paris Saint-Germain is owned by Qatar, which owns beIN Sports, which owns the television rights to the Champions League. So they were never going to do anything to threaten that. Okay, so that was why that happened. Even though they have Neymar and Mbappe and whatever, like, they would have been a nice addition to the Super League, but they were always like, no, because they need to protect the Champions League, because beIN Sports owns the rights to the Champions League. So the German teams,
to cut you off, Nando, but I just wanted, like, for people who don't like follow soccer closely, the Champions League makes good money, and being in it can make a lot of money for your club. Particularly, it can be really great for a smaller mid-level club to get in. A big part of this Super League push is that all of these big names aren't always in the Champions League, and they're not always. So it's like, it's literally what was going on here was like an anti-competition move, right? Like,
totally.
Our clubs aren't winning enough to make us as much money as we want.
Totally.
So we're going to create a new league so that we can always, you know, at least be on the, you know, in the spectacle and the conversation.
Yeah. So
like
ultimately,
the UN Security Council. They were permanent members.
Right. Like, because I think there's a surface level where somebody who's not familiar with the ins and outs of this would think, well, they're just getting all the best teams together so you can have the highest level of competition. But like you're saying, this is just like, because Manchester United, I recognize that as a major brand name. I had no idea that they'd fallen off. So, right.
Big time,
right. So, I mean, that's fascinating.
AC Milan, which was arguably the most dominant team of the 80s and 90s, certainly the late 80s and early 90s, and also, like, you know, won Champions Leagues in the early 2000s. They don't make the Champions League anymore. They haven't made it in a long time.
Right.
And you know, ditto Tottenham Hotspur. Like, they don't make the Champions League. I mean, they make it like every once in a while, but not really. You know, that they're not like they haven't won. They've never won the Champions League. They've never won it, and they've only won the Premier. I think the last time they won a Premier League title, or I guess it was back then, it wasn't the Premier League, but it was like 60 years ago, and they were in the Super League. But yeah, so it was anti-competitive. I mean, the idea that they were permanent members, there's going to be 15 permanent members, and they were going to invite 5 new clubs every year. People were like, "What the fuck? This is bullshit. Like, this is just bullshit. This just cuts at the core of what the Champions League is about, what European soccer is about, where it's the big teams are not going to get relegated anymore. You know, like, that doesn't happen anymore. But still, like,
the Yankees are just in the playoffs every year, basically.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Matt.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, David, you talk about the German teams, and the German teams are very interesting. The German Bundesliga has an ownership structure that it mandates a 50+1 ownership, a fan ownership kind of structure. So, like, these clubs really are almost like trusts of the community, right? Like Bayern Munich, it really is. It's not like I don't know how to explain it. Like, the club is run by former players. Like, they have a very good connection with the local community. They really foment that. The fans kind of are very involved. Like, they're very, very open to them. You know, the culture in German soccer is one of, like, extreme fan-centric everything, from ticket prices to TV scheduling times, to, like what's the best way for the local fans to be able to go to the stadium with their families, enjoy the game, hang out with the players. Like they even do like very kind of open fan events with their players and things like that. And they were never going to join the Super League. I mean, and that also crucially hobbled it, because you can't imagine a European Super League without Bayern Munich. I mean, that is just, they are just titans of the sport, and like having them out was just always going to be a weird thing. And what the Super League teams, like they just misread the local sentiment, both in the UK and in Germany. They just misread it. Like they did not expect the fan backlash, and that's just a pure misunderstanding of how soccer is felt in that part of the world, which I find interesting, because these people own the clubs,
right?
But they have no idea what those fucking people like want or think or anything like that. They're just completely removed. So
they're using all their brain power for this high level executive decision making, and not understanding the fucking team that they own and what it means to the community.
No, it's really crazy. And while I don't appreciate the anti-American sentiment of a lot of the hatred that you get in the UK, I mean, it's 100% true that it's just absurd to have, like, for example, the Glazer family, who was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, come in and act like they understand this club that is so storied and has deep roots in the community. But in the last couple of minutes, I would be curious what your thoughts are, because, like, look, we don't have, like, this is something that Corbyn got attacked for, as being so outlandish when he was talking about how important it was to return a little bit more fan control over the sport. But as as socialists, like, I think it's like American sports is a whole other conversation, but I think that this is very applicable to American sports too. This understanding that, like, well, America is a great example of this, because, like, we publicly fund a lot of these teams in a sense, right?
It's crazy. The stadiums,
like, using public lands and things like that, but we have no ownership of them. I mean, try to go to an NFL game. Like, I've never been to one, because I could never afford a ticket to an NFL game, let alone the Super Bowl, right? As much as we think of, like, football in the United States as being like a working class, sport,
it's to watch on TV,
unless you're the Green Bay Packers, owned by the fans.
Yeah. And like, and those models are exciting. I think that, we can even argue for more expanded versions of that. But the reason that
just to note a quick, David, on that is the NFL has outlawed anybody following in the Green Bay model. So
really, they're so evil.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like what they wanted. They basically wanted to create the NFL with the European Super League, in which the owners of the teams basically run everything. They control everything. Right now they don't, and it pisses them off. And that's really what they wanted to do. And they would have created, like, the situation with the NFL, in which the owners are like little mini kings that we have in America. I mean, Jerry Jones, like, the amount of power that he has, because he is just like, he runs the NFL. Like, it's crazy. It's funny that they banned that model from the
no, because it's so against American capitalism, even though American sports obviously operate on this extremely regulated level. But just in the last couple of minutes, I just want to make this point and hear what your thoughts are on this, right? Is that what you saw in reaction to this move was, despite the fact that these clubs in the UK and in Spain and Italy, like, they do have these powerful owners that can do a lot. You literally just saw community power, player power, coaches. Like, you saw players saying, this is messed up. I don't want to participate in this. This is a blindside to me. This is offensive to me. Standing with protesters. I know, like, Peter Cech, who's a legendary goalkeeper for Chelsea, like, addressed the crowd of protesters outside, said, like, we're going to take care of this. And then a couple hours later, they made the announcement, right? It was a really interesting moment that, despite even, like, the legal control that certain people have over this, that the fans and the players, were basically able to push and fight for a different outcome. And also juxtapose that with the fact that in Germany, they have the 50+1 rule, right? Where you can't have these outside international billionaire firms. Like, you don't have the same kind of, Russian oligarchs like own Chelsea, or, or families, like own Man City, owning German teams. And I don't think the German system is necessarily perfect, But we definitely saw like an alternative vision of what soccer could be in a better world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it would be kind of hilarious because this was such a flashpoint in the UK. I can't stress enough like how widespread the English reaction was to this. Where like the fucking Crown got behind it, the fucking Prime Minister got behind it. Like Boris Johnson was like, "We're gonna do everything we can to stop this," and I would not be surprised. I mean, I would be kind of surprised, but it's not outside the realm of imagination to imagine Boris Johnson, fucking Tory, disgusting
Just a man baby,
pig,
yeah.
but kind of kind of has a feel for what's, you know what I mean? Like that's why he backed Brexit when everyone else in his party was against it. He was like, he felt that there was something in the, in the ether, so to speak. Like he has kind of a feel for that, a genuine kind of populist feel for the crowd. And you can imagine a situation in which he was like, he took advantage of this and passed some sort of like reform through parliament, because like apparently like 100% of parliament was united in their condemnation of the European Super League. Like it's like the first time that's happened in like however the fuck long.
What, Rees-Mogg?
It was like
Rees-Mogg was against it. Everyone was like, and Lord Chantfordshire Bump the fuck Woolery was also behind it. Like all these fucking inbred people. But like, like you can imagine a situation where in the UK, because this has been such a big deal, and because they saw it crucially as a foreign attack on everything they hold dear. I mean, this was attacked by greedy Spaniards and American capitalists and and oil money from the Middle East, that you can imagine them maybe from like a right populist kind of point of view passing some sort of legislation that barred this kind of ownership structure from their teams.
Well, I know we've gone over a little bit, but just since I have the opportunity, I would like to ask you, because I know so much about what happened in the UK.
Yeah.
What would you categorize the UK reaction as stronger than what we saw in Spain and Italy? Like what's going on in those countries in response to this? Because pretty much what I've seen is that people in the UK immediately started showing up. I know people were upset, but the president of Real Madrid was like gung ho about this and is still gung ho about this. And I'm so pissed I don't have the clip, but he was going on, I can't remember exactly where, but about how they just want to do something like I don't know, we all play FIFA, so like FIFA Ultimate Team. He was like, this is what the kids are doing online, is they're basically doing the Ultimate Team. And somebody made a really funny video where like they had like a bunch of people in penguins and riding velociraptors like playing. Anyway, tangent. But like why or like could you categorize those the Italian and the Spanish reaction, and why you think it might have been different, or was it the same? We just didn't see the coverage.
No, it was totally different. The reaction in Spain and Italy was nowhere near as virulent as it was in the UK. I think most people in Spain were resigned to it. They were like, no one liked it, but there wasn't the fiery kind of backlash that there was in the UK, because I think crucially in the UK, they felt they had the power to do it for many reasons. One is that the Premier League is the most powerful league, which, by the way, the Premier League itself was a breakaway league in the early 90s. They did a similar thing, and they broke away from the rest of the league structure. But the Premier League in the UK is very, very powerful. They did have 6 teams, so like all they needed to do was get one, and then the rest of them would fall. But also just because in Spain, at least in Spain, the specter of Florentino, the president of Real Madrid, looms very, very large. He has a very well-oiled propaganda machine behind him, like journalists in his pocket. I mean, the interviews that he went on were like, I mean, he basically controls the most powerful sports TV show in Spain, El Chiringuito, the one that he went on. Like, I mean, it was just blatant, just propaganda for the Super League, and for, even though like the people were against it. And there's just resignation in Spain that the two big teams are so powerful that they can do whatever they want. Whereas in the UK, they maintain both culturally, but also through the way that the leagues are structured, way more of a domestic league love of their leagues. Like in the UK, they love their like third division team, and that they go and the fans go crazy and they fill the stadiums. Like, it's just not the same in Spain and Italy. They don't have that same level of culture around going to the grounds and being with your mates and having a pint and the thing. It's a different type of thing, and it's interesting to look at the reasons why that is. But that's what it is. Like, the UK was completely different, and that's what I always assumed the Super League would never happen, because I was like, the British will never allow something that would affect their local league. They just wouldn't allow it. It just and it turns out I was right.
Yeah, well, I'm glad for for all of us that you were. And and also, like, one thing that the Brits have gotten right is that league is extremely competitive. Which is actually pretty unique.
Well, because they do more of a profit sharing. They do more of a generous profit sharing. They understood that the strength of the league is what's going to make them dominate the world, right? So whereas the Italian clubs and the Spanish clubs were more short-sighted, the big ones, they were like, no, we create all this value, so we take all the value. The British system is much more egalitarian, as is the German system, but just the German system was like started from like a much smaller place. The German league has never been as big as the British league, but the British league distributes its revenues more generously, which really was a rising tide lifts all boats, because as they did that, it's the sort of, after the big three in Spain, the fourth biggest team, say Valencia or Sevilla or whatever, big, successful teams, they can't compete for wages with the last place team in the UK. Sometimes you'll see players leave decent mid-table to upper middle table teams in Spain for a second division team in the UK, because there's so much more money there now. This is a relatively new phenomenon, and it's because of the way the Premier League has been very savvy about understanding that it's the competition that matters, and that we're selling the competition. We're selling the league. We're not just selling the individual teams. Yes, we have to sell the individual teams, but we're selling them within this league, and that's really what's gonna make us all strong. And it turns out they were right. I mean, that's really why. It's still true that the big teams have much more money, and the Man City thing has really distorted a lot of things, because they have just overwhelming. Like, I mean, they dwarf anyone else in terms of what they spend. It's really crazy. But still, like the West Bromwich Albions of the world and the Burnleys of the world and the Sunderlands of the world and all that stuff, they have a decent chunk of change that comes in from the TV rights, whereas Betis, which is like a traditionally pretty big team in Spain, like they're like struggling for air every single year.
Yeah, I know it's definitely interesting. And Nando, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us tonight and talk about this.
I can always yap about the European Super League. This has been so much fun.
It's very cathartic. Folks should definitely check out all of Nando's other projects. Nando is able to cover a lot, from the European Super League to socialist politics on weekends, to all sorts of topics on Woke Bros, as well as deep dives into Entourage as well. So I always appreciate talking to you, man. Hope to see you sometime in person soon.
By the way, for those viewing at home, David's really modest. David was a very, very, very successful soccer player. What did you play? Give us your quick story of your soccer career.
There was a period of time before I discovered beer and cigarettes when I could play a little bit, and I spent some time with the Wilmington Hammerheads, which is USL, which is beneath MLS.
But still, it's like semi-pro soccer. That's a big deal.
It was fun, it's better. Man. It was definitely a lot of fun. I actually, oh damn. I had it the other day, I just came back to Austin. So my mom's been unloading all of the, the stuff from storage, and she had a bunch of my old newspaper articles. I showed Matt the other night.
Hell yeah. That's amazing.
Some of them about me, but maybe another time, maybe in the post game.
All right.
But Nando, man, really appreciate you taking the time. Hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks,
you
Nando.
too, guys. Take it easy.